Hello and welcome all you IGNOU aspirants. In this explainer, we are diving deep into Unit 4 from your MEC 108 course, which is all about the demand for educational services. My goal here is pretty simple. We're going to break down these concepts and make them super clear so you feel totally prepared for your exams.
Okay, so here's the game plan for today. We're going to walk through the big ideas in your unit. We'll kick things off by asking if education is a public good. Then we'll hit some key jargon you need to know. After that, we'll compare two major theories, get into the nitty-gritty of costs and benefits, look at a really interesting alternative view, and then wrap it all up with the key takeaways you'll want to remember for your exam.
All right, let's get right into it. The first big question that your unit tackles is, how do economists even classify education? You'd think it's a simple question, but as we're about to see, the answer is anything but straightforward.
So this is really the fundamental question we have to answer right at the start. Is education a pure public good? But before we can even answer that, we have to get really clear on what that term pure public good actually means in economics. Okay, so check this out. It all boils down to two key ideas: rivalry and excludability. A private good, like say a samosa, is both. It's rivalrous, if I eat it, you can't, and it's excludable. The shopkeeper can stop me from having it if I don't pay. Now, a pure public good, like the air we breathe or national defense, is the total opposite. It's non-rivalrous, me being protected doesn't reduce your protection, and it's non-excludable. So the big question is, where does education fit in all of this?
And that brings us to a super important concept: externalities. See, when one person gets an education, the benefits don't just stop with them. They spill over to everyone else. We're talking a better workforce, more innovation, even lower crime rates. These are what we call positive externalities, and they are a huge, huge reason why governments are so involved in education.
Okay, let's build on that. Because education doesn't fit neatly into the public or private box, economists have come up with a whole bunch of other labels for it. And this part is like a jargon blitz. You'll definitely want to know these terms for your exam.
First up, we've got merit good. This is a big one. Think of a merit good as something the government thinks is so good for society, everyone should have it, whether they can afford it or not. The perfect example is basic schooling. You know, like the Right to Education Act here in India. That's a classic merit good.
Next, your unit talks about quasi-public goods, which are sometimes called mixed goods. Higher education, like a university degree, is the go-to example here. And why is that? Well, it's rivalrous. There are only so many seats in a good college, and it's excludable because you have to pay the fees, but it still creates all those awesome positive externalities for society.
And wow, it gets even more specific. Education can also be called an experience good because you really don't know how good a course is until after you've taken it. It's also a trust good. You have to trust that your degree will be valuable down the line. And it can be a positional good. Think about how a degree from a top IIT or IIM gets its value from its high rank. And of course, in today's world, online knowledge can act as a global public good.
Okay, let's get into the theoretical heart of this unit. Why do we even demand education? Like, what's the point of it all? Well, there are two major competing theories that try to answer that very question. Now, this table is pure gold for your exam revision. On one side, you have the human capital approach. This theory basically sees you as an investment. You get educated, you gain skills, you become a better worker, and you earn more money. Simple. But on the other side, you have Amartya Sen's capability approach, which is way broader. It says education isn't just about getting a job, it's about expanding your freedom to live the kind of life you want to live.
So the key word in Sen's theory is functionings. This isn't just about earning a paycheck. It's about your ability to be healthy, to be part of your community, to have self-respect, all the things that make life worthwhile. Education, in this view, enhances your capability to achieve these functionings.
Now, Sen lists 5 instrumental freedoms. And I know memorizing lists can be a real pain for exams. So here's a little mnemonic to help you out. Just think PEST P. It sounds a bit funny, but it works. People expect social transparency and protection. That covers political freedoms, economic facilities, social opportunities, transparency guarantees, and protective security. PEST P. Got it?
All right, let's switch gears from the theory to the practical side of things. If we're going to think of education as an investment, we need to know how to calculate the costs and figure out if it's actually worth it. This is where we get into the real economics of demand. Okay, so the total social cost of education is basically everything that society puts into it. And you can break that down into two big chunks. First, you've got the institutional costs. That's stuff like paying teachers, maintaining buildings, buying equipment. And then you have the private costs, which are the costs that fall directly on you and your family.
Now this is where it gets really, really interesting. When we look closer at those private costs, it's not just about the obvious stuff like fees, books, and your bus fare. A massive part of it is something called opportunity cost. This is a huge concept for your exam. It's the money you're not earning because you're in a classroom instead of at a job. For a lot of people, this is actually the biggest single cost of getting an education.
So, up to this point, we've basically assumed that education makes you more skilled and productive. But there's another theory, a pretty powerful one, that questions that entire idea.
And this is the question at the heart of it. Think about it for a second. Does going to college actually build valuable skills? Or does it just prove to employers that you were already smart and hardworking to begin with? It's a pretty provocative thought, right?
And that question leads us directly to Michael Spence's signaling theory. His argument is that employers have a hard time telling who's a great candidate and who's just okay. So they use a college degree as a signal or a kind of filter. Getting through a tough degree signals that you have what it takes. You're intelligent, you're diligent, you don't give up easily. And maybe that's what they're actually paying for.
And this slide just lays it out perfectly. The human capital theory says education creates value. It makes you more productive. Signaling theory says nope. Education just reveals the value that was already there. It's a really subtle but super important difference in how we think about what our schools and colleges are actually doing.
Okay, let's bring this all home. This is it, your final revision section. We're going to do a rapid-fire review of the absolute must-know concepts from Unit 4. Think of this as your ultimate cheat sheet for the exam.
All right, focus in on this. You absolutely need to know what makes a public good. You have to understand why we call basic schooling a merit good. Be ready to explain positive externalities. You must be able to contrast the human capital and capability approaches. Know the definition of opportunity cost, specifically as lost wages. And finally, be able to explain what signaling theory is all about. Seriously, these are the core building blocks for this entire unit.
And I'll leave you with one last thing to think about. If Spence's signaling theory is right, even just partly right, and a degree is more of a signal than a skill builder, then what does that say about what we're actually being taught in our colleges and universities? It's a really big question, with some pretty huge implications. Anyway, that's our deep dive for today. Thank you for joining me, and all the very best with your exam prep.